budget. I think by 1994 we probably ought to be able to get to a balanced budget. But the interesting factor, the President-elect said, I said no to taxes. And the only way he's going to get taxes is almost to get down on his knees and say to the Congress of the United States, this is my program and I'm asking for it. How do you put new educational programs in? How do you put in new child care programs in if you don't get fresh currency? The currency, the money is not there for those programs unless he goes the tax route, which he says he's not going to go. And that is one of his great problems that he faces.
And indeed, the dialogue between the President-elect and the Congress on the tax issue, obviously, is going to be a rather long one. It is 42 minutes after the hour.
Mason-Dixon line. Does Trent Lott look to you like, politically speaking, the man of the future, conservative, Republican, Southern?
Well, he's the man of the hour for Mississippi. I presume that's right. Thank you, Bob.
On the other hand, Congressman Lott, do Democrats like Bob Kerry over there spell trouble for George Bush, to use the words of Senator Bob Dole?
Well, I think it's not the right time to be talking about trouble. I think what we ought to be talking about is what can we do working together to help our country and to move our country forward in prosperity and every other way. So I don't look at it as a negative thing. I think we ought to be looking positively right now.
Who's going to be making that first positive overture when you all get together? Will that come from the executive branch or from the Hill?
Well, I think it doesn't help if the Congress starts off talking negatively, but I think the first overture does need to come from the new President of the United States, and I'm sure George Bush is going to be very aggressive in trying to work with the Congress, both houses of the Congress.
Governor Kerry, what do you need to hear from the President-elect?
Well, I think that's what Trent has said is absolutely right. We're going to need to see from the President a willingness to take on some of the responsibilities for solving America's problems. In particular, not just shove off upon the Congress those are the most unpleasant. We face some major problems, not only with the fiscal deficit, but with the trade deficit, and an awful lot of problems at home. One of your opening question referenced why is it that Democrats do well at the state level. An awful lot of that has to do with our understanding that most of the problems are going to be solved here at home. Our schools, our environment, our agriculture problems are likely to be solved here at home, and we've got to make that effort here.
Congressman Lott, what do you think, and I'm going to guess that some Reagan appointees in Washington by the hundreds, if not the thousands, are a little nervous this morning when they hear George Bush's chief of staff talking about putting their own men and women in those slots. Why aren't Reagan appointees going to be good enough? Do you think they'll be more conservative or less?
Well, I think some of them will be the same, but I think that George Bush and his administration will take a fresh look and try to bring in some new, fresh people, and that's important. But remember this, our new president, George Bush, is experienced. I think that's one of the reasons why he won. I think that's why I won in Mississippi. And he ran on some very important values in the American people's mind. George Bush will be able to work with the Congress. He'll also put together a good team in Washington because he knows how to get the job done there.
Did you hear Tony Coelho earlier on the program say that he'll govern as a moderate?
He may, but, you know, that's in the eye of the beholder. I think that people are looking for leadership that has some values they stand for. You may describe them as liberal, moderate, or conservative. But the main thing is to have some direction and some things we do stand for and we're willing to fight for. That's the way the people in Mississippi voted this year. I think that's why they voted for George Bush, and I think that's why they voted for Trent Lott.
All right, gentlemen, once again, our congratulations. We'll be seeing more of you. In a moment, we'll see how many of those propositions on ballots across the country made out after we take station break.
KCRA, the home of Live Camera 3. Should English be the official classroom language? Find out on the next USA Today how America feels about the subject. Join us tonight at 7 here on KCRA TV Channel 3.
Attention shoppers, the Giant's back. A 1987 Plymouth Reliant for only $34.50 a week. Right now at Giant Toyota Town in Stockton, we have 20 to choose from, and for only $2.99 down. Each have automatic air conditioning, AM, FM, and more. But remember, Giant Toyota Town has only 20 at this price. They won't last long. Hurry down today. That's Giant Toyota Town on Hammer Lane, just off Highway 99 in Stockton. Giant location, giant discount, and giant inventory.
Not all the votes cast on Tuesday were for candidates. Voters in 41 states also marked their ballots for or against a number of propositions and referendum. Subjects range from auto insurance and gun control to abortions and AIDS. To explore some of the outcomes, we welcome Dr. David McElby back for the second consecutive morning. He's a professor of political science at Brigham Young University and the author of a book on propositions. Dr. McElby is in our Salt Lake City affiliate, KUTV. Good morning again.
Good morning, Brian.
Do proposition vote totals generally correlate directly with the turnout, or do they lag farther behind?
Well, there is some what we call drop-off. A good question. It depends upon the complexity and length of the ballot. It can be as high as 20% of those who turn out to vote not voting on some ballot propositions. So it would vary by state, but yesterday, given the number of measures, I suspect there was a lot of drop-off on ballot propositions in a state like California.
Since we're only going to do a couple of minutes on this, we're going to oversimplify some of the measures a great deal, but let's review some of the major ones. In Maryland, for example, gun control to keep the ban on cheap handguns, the voters voted yes. This is a big defeat for the NRA?
That's a big defeat for the NRA and a big victory for folks who want to ban Saturday night specials. As I said yesterday, if it did pass, I thought it would give courage to state legislatures around the country to do what Maryland did.
Yeah. California, auto insurance. There were 5 measures out there, the major ones. No on reducing car insurance premiums. No on reforming rate settings. That a big win for the auto insurance folks?
Well, in many ways it is, but I think it speaks to the complexity of that California ballot. I think voters resulted to voting no on all of them because it became so complicated.
Yeah. What are the national implications of California's votes on AIDS? They said no on the required reporting of positive AIDS tests, but yes on AIDS tests for certain crimes. How do you read that?
Well, I think that they were very different measures. I think California voters behaved responsibly, certainly, with respect to the one of rape victims and police officers who were assaulted. They certainly deserve the right to know if their assailant has the disease. On the other measure, lots and lots of folks came out against it. I think that is a sign that it was seen as a civil liberties issue.
Abortion was on the ballot in 3 states, in Michigan, Arkansas, and Colorado. And in each case, the voters decided yes to ban state-financed abortions. This is another one of those yes-no that's terribly caught up in semantics. Clarify it for me. Is this clearly a victory for the anti-abortion forces?
It is, and in fact, it's a reversal of the trend we'd seen up through '88, where the pro-choice folks had been winning these kinds of state funding of abortion referendums. I think this is the issue, Bryant, that we're going to see over and over again in 1990 and perhaps beyond. The anti-abortion forces will take some victory here in these 3 and I think go to several other states with similar measures.
Another one that we're certain to see come up again is nuclear power. We had votes in 2 states. Massachusetts voted no on shutting down nuclear power plants. Nebraska voted no on ending interstate nuclear waste disposal. That's kind of a mixed signal there, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is, but they were very different measures. The Nebraska one had to do with an interstate compact that had been there for some time and I think was seen as a commitment the state had already made and ought to be lived up to. The Massachusetts one was a way to decide whether or not to proceed with the generation of nuclear power. Lots of money was spent to defeat it, consistent with what we were talking about yesterday.
Yeah, final note. Once defeated, are these propositions dead and buried, or can they simply pop up time and time again?
Oh, they pop up time and time again, and in fact, in initiative politics, you win by losing, Bryant, because by virtue of getting on the ballot and getting you and me to talk about them the morning after, they've succeeded in setting the agenda.
As one comic says, what a country. Dr. David McElby, thank you very much.
Administration will not be as exciting socially because a lot of those people have been around for years and years and years. And I think if Dukakis had come in, there would have been a lot more excitement because it's just a new energy, a new addition, new blood. But I do think that the Bush people's, I mean, sounds ironic, but I think that the Bush administration will be much more democratic in the way it handles its social events and the kind of social tone, because I think that's the kind of person Barbara Bush is. And I think she's going to have a great deal of influence on who comes to the White House and who's in favor. And I think the kinds of people that she has as friends are people who are just ordinary, nice people, people who she's known, people from the Hill, people in the Senate. Senate wives like her a great deal. So I think that it won't be nearly as exciting and glitzy as it was during the Reagan administration, but I think it'll be a lot calmer and it'll be a lot more real Washington.
Sally, do you think that the Washington social scene helped set policy?
I think people outside of Washington don't have any idea how valuable the social scene is in Washington. When you talk about social scene, it always sounds so frivolous, but what people don't understand is that it's not, people don't go out for fun. They go out because they're working. This is just an extension of the working day, and when they go out at night, they make contacts, they make deals, they get together with each other, and it promotes communication, particularly when you have a Democratic Senate, a Democratic House, and a Republican administration. Oftentimes, those people have no way to get together or meet each other except at dinner or at night, where they can have informal conversations.
Sally Quinn, thank you so much for joining us.
6 words a democracy has to offer. The people have spoken. And with...
You spent the evening with your dad as he went over the top. Tell us what it was like.
Well, it was a little tense early until some of the big Midwestern states started going his way, and at that point, all the burdens of campaigning left our shoulders, and we started to celebrate. Frankly, the impact of the election has not sunk in yet, Brian. We're all wondering what it means to our private lives. We all know what it means to the country, though, and it's good news.
I'm proud to say that we not only will continue to have a Democratic Congress, but it looks as if a strengthened Democratic Senate.
If there's any good news to be found this morning, where is it?
Well, I think it's to be found in the Senate, and the House, and the governorships. It's at every level. We're doing very well.
Sort of like a McDonald's election. No Big Mac, no mandate, no agenda, no coattails.
How deeply would I have to scratch to find some anger in you toward Michael Dukakis for not running a better campaign?
No, not me. I've seen what these people go through, and I think we're fortunate that we have people like Mike Dukakis and George Bush that are willing to sacrifice, and their families are willing to sacrifice. This is an ordeal.
Thank you all.
Mr. Lieberman, what, as we speak, is your lead over Senator Weicker?
Well, Jane, the lead is variously estimated as between 7,500 and 15,000. It's a small, close win, but nobody thought I ever had any chance, so I'm glad if I win by 10 votes.
But when it was official and you were the governor-elect, who did you turn to, your wife or your dad?
Oh, I turned to both, Jane. How's that for somebody who grew up in a political household?
When you talk about finding this common ground that Democrats must find with the president-elect, where do you think they might find the most fertile possibilities?
Well, when he said that he wanted to have a more gentle and a kind nation.
A campaign is a disagreement, and disagreements divide. But an election is a decision, and decisions clear the way for harmony and peace.
Been a long morning. Good morning, we hope. Hope you've enjoyed it. We'll see you tomorrow.
In a pretty place called Chappaquiddick.